Take my hand, oh Abba Father, show me what you say. Guide me from within my spirit, I will let you lead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's slightly embarrassing. Just like this much. Okay, so that's hilarious, actually. So basically, in a nutshell, I let this thing dry for about a few weeks. Well, it's been maybe about a month now. I started this a while ago, about a month ago, roughly. Had this completely covered in white and blue paint and oranges and yellows and stuff. And because it's white mixed with it so thickly, I have to let it dry for extra amounts of time if I want to paint over it without getting this kind of milky color. And I wanted to get these real nice dark contrasty colors, so I had to wait until this dried. So now that it's completely dry, I'm going to be demonstrating how to do like impressionistic silhouettes and stuff, and putting the rest of this tree, the rest of the backgrounds, background trees, and even if we have enough time today, I'll be working on this little kind of river or lake in the background. I do have a reference photo. This will be for someone that's in Texas. So without any further ado, let us begin. I'm mixing. And I don't have my yellow. So as y'all know, I typically only work with like 3 or 4 colors. And those 3 colors would be crimson, ultramarine blue, and medium yellow, typically. In this particular case, so we can get a kind of like almost a black color right in this area for the tree, I'm going to use some, but not a lot of phthalo blue, just to kind of darken it up right in this area. But we also want it to look farther away, so some of the area is going to have some phthalo blue, some of it's going to have ultramarine. I'll go back and forth between the two. And I'm going to see how fast I can achieve this as well. So it's going to be a mixture. If I can find it. I seem to have misplaced my yellow. Here it is. Didn't want to break open the new can or YouTube. Here we go. Got my yellow. This time I've actually cleaned off the palette so I won't have to spend like 10 minutes just rambling. Super excited about that. Spent like 10 minutes or so taking this heavy duty palette knife, scraping that sucker off. Just getting a little bit of white in case we need it. We probably won't, to be totally honest, because we're worried more about the darks, or we're more concerned about the darks than we are about the lights. Here we go. So I'm going to start with some phthalo blue, not very much, just a little bit out in the middle. We're going to put it on our dark pile on the bottom left of our palette, closer to the crimsons, so just about that much. And then we're going to jump into probably like 1.5 times as much crimson. Because we want it more towards the red side. But also we're going to be putting in just a smidge of yellow. So it's a purplish color towards the blue, well, towards the red side, mostly. You want it to be very close, but mostly towards the red side. Or more towards the red side. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of yellow to kind of brown it. All right, so all this should be more towards the warm side. And even though it's kind of whiting out and milking up a little bit right there, I'm going to come back over it and just layer in here and there some darker spots to give it a little bit more depth. The layers really do help with that. Yeah, let's just moderately put a little bit of the yellow in there. Here. Just going to show you what I'm doing. I'm just gradually kind of adding to it just to get a sense for how brown it is or how close to the yellow it is. Because you don't want it super, super brown. You want it more towards like the purple. You want it very dark. Because once you put it on here, you can't really take this back. Now you can always go back over it, and it dries pretty fast because it's got crimson in it. But I'm trying to avoid that if possible. Okay, so that's about good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start take a little sample part of it and just kind of touch it on there. And that's pretty close. So it's a little bit too dark for my taste. I'm going to add a little bit of white to it, then come back and add a little bit more yellow, and then tap it into that white and see where it looks. There we go. That's better. Because we want it very warm. But the closer to this side we get, we want it a little bit cooler. So right over here in this area, we're going to keep it very, very red and warm, or the brown towards the warmer side, and then we'll gradually work from there. And I'm going to start adding just a little bit more of the white in there so we can kind of tone down that color and make it look a little further away. Because the white at this point, you don't want it to be super, super dark. You actually do want it just a little bit milky, but not as extreme as like these areas. So this is about right. Then once we get to the other side, we're going to start putting in a little bit more blue and white. Because the further away from your heat source you are, or the light source, most times it's going to be a little bit cooler. And in this case, that's what we got. And because we've already got this undercoat right here, it's good because we can automatically see through the leaves and stuff. And then when we want it to be really, really completely covered, you just go over and over the source and the spots that you want it. So for instance, this particular point, If we want no lights to shine through it, you just keep going over that spot. And it flattens it out. That's kind of unappealing. But if you're trying to go for that effect, like for instance, um, where my photograph is concerned, the customer wanted it to be just like the photograph. So we're going to actually be working with that. Just kind of covering it up nicely. Because no light shows through these leaves. And as a matter of fact, you can barely even see the branches. Only this area is the only particular point where I saw branches. As a matter of fact, I'm glad I looked at the photo again. Why, hello, Ren. It's good to see you. Miss you, dude. I was actually going to call you yesterday, but I got super freaking tired. I had like 4 hours, and I went and submitted some leave so that I can head over to Georgia here pretty soon. I was going to call you and your family, see how y'all were doing. It's good seeing you. I do have something I'd like to share with you, but that's kind of in private, so that'll be for another time. But do tell, how's the wife and them? I saw that Eli was doing what is it called? Broadcasts? Yeah, I saw that he was doing broadcasts. I was like, that's awesome. That's super awesome. Whenever I got the chance, I came over and looked at that. I'm super glad that God's using him in those ways. He's definitely come a long way since when I first met him on that broadcast, where he was actually terrified of going on, or very quiet when he was on. Now he's got zero fear of it, which is super awesome. Ooh, have you seen the late paintings or my latest paintings? Those ones are pretty sweet. My particular favorite one is the one I did last. It was with, you can see two of the trees. There are actually like tons of trees in there, but there's only two of them that you can actually make out, unfortunately, because I covered most of them up with the massive branches and such. Kind of a letdown, but it still looks really good. Yes. Oh, so you're kicking butt and taking name, yes? So are you kicking their butts? May I have your name, please? Oh, yes. Very good. You're underfoot now. I definitely want to see that. That's awesome. I'm so glad that y'all are still doing that. I don't know if I told you, but I actually got some of my, or a bunch of my pieces into a gallery over in Destin, Florida, which is about an hour and a half away from here. And then I'm still in the middle of a couple of commissions. This is one of them. And they're all going pretty freaking well. One of them's done. And it's just a matter of time when, well, they pay me in increments. Super excited for the Tracy Cook event that's going up in Georgia. I saw that y'all had, what was it, an intensive of sorts that y'all were doing over in Oklahoma. I never did get the chance to take a look at that and do some more research. I was pretty busy, but yeah, definitely like to get, once I get the chance, to take a talking to you. There we go. So on this one, so this particular area, there, I'm gonna actually start or stop painting all these darker leaves, these foreground leaves, because there's some, like, just right in this area is like a bank, a further bank that's far away. So I'm just going to kind of do the outline of where the tree starts and ends. It kind of comes up and goes down, and right back up. So there's my basic shape. Just kind of sketching it out. It pokes up like this, pokes out, comes down, around, and then stops like that. But a lot of the trees right here show through in almost blues, so I'm going to be careful about that. I'm going to be combining more of the blues with the whites and yellows. So I found out recently that adding so taking a light purple and mixing it with like a lot of yellow and white turns it into a gray. It's mostly the white that does it, but I'm going to demonstrate right here on my palette. So you got your light purple. You go over, grab some yellow, mostly yellow, because this purple is pretty powerful. And if you want it to be more towards the blue side, just go and dip into a little bit more of the blue, not a whole bunch, because phthalo blue is super powerful. Then go into a lot of white, and boom. Just keep adding blue until you get the consistency that you need. And you don't need much, believe me. That phthalo blue, you just need like a dab of it and it'll turn you into a different color. And I'm just grabbing, touching, pulling into blue and then white and yellow just a little bit until I get the mixture and consistency that I want, because we still got a lot of leftover paint in that brush. And we do want it to the cooler side too, because it's further away. There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to start forming out the leaves that are towards the bottom side. And that's a good reference point right here, because we just need to keep make sure it's just the same value, which means like the shade. So when you're drawing, you'll notice the difference between darkness and light very easily. With color, it's the same way, except you have to take into consideration the color and the temperature. So in my case, we need it a little bit warmer than this. So I'm just going to dip in a little bit towards that red side and add a little bit of red. That's pretty close. So I was just dipping into the brown that we had mixed on the far right. This is what we were working with earlier, but temperature-wise, we're going to work with this one. it's about the same value that we had to work with. And if you just want a little bit more warm than that or a little bit darker than that, just go into this darker color that you made earlier. So in my case, I'm just going to paint this in right here. This is just a reflection of the trees. And they kind of come up like this. And they don't really show too much of the sky reflecting or showing through. So we're going to make sure it has some leaves at the top, but not much. Or at the bottom, I meant. And then towards the shoreline, that's a kind of key point too. When you're painting in the shoreline, this particular one has a very dark point right here. So I'll probably just take a palette knife, mix in a slightly darker gray, and it'll be a pretty warm temperature. So let's try this. Yeah, so this mixture that I just added a little bit of this darker color right here to this and created this, which is like right in the middle. It's about what you want. So from there, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm kind of leaving in also a kind of blank spot. That's the spot in between where I saw kind of like a bluish tinted shadow. So I'm going to leave that. And I think they actually kind of pull down a little bit more. So we're just going to pull this down just a wee bit more, kind of extend it. And notice this little blank spot, that's where we're going to keep our cooler colors. And I'm going to start putting in that same color right over here, just above, because there's going to be cooler color right here as well. And if you get it on the dark spot, just wipe it off because it's dry. Just a technique that you can use, period. It's super easy. And right here, there's actually an area that I'll probably end up leaving blank. I'm actually going to paint over it. It's kind of the stick or a tree with its branches that are sticking up. I'm going to paint over it, but I can see through it enough to where I can come back and just paint them back. But for now, I'm not going to worry about that, because we can always just do what I did earlier and just let it dry, and we're good to go on that. So over here, I'm going to do a similar thing. I just paint in some of that nice shadowy color or the reflection color. And at this particular point, it's a little bit darker too. So just going to go back into that purple with this same mixture, maybe a little bit more yellow. And a smidge more of that. There we go. Just a little bit of blue. Really want it to darken up over here. This area, we kind of want it to be a bit closer to the darker points, like the darker values. It's okay to paint over these areas right here as well, because you don't see any of this orange in the photograph. I'll be showing y'all the photograph here shortly after. We can always paint over this branch that I just covered with blue. Now, right about here is where we're going to have a nice reflection coming down. So I'm just going to leave this particular area alone for the most part. And then you got a lot of the reflection coming down. It's actually more towards the purple side. And the blue side, not the purple side. So just come on, tap this in just a little bit. Now, right about here is when you start seeing a lot more of the different oranges and yellows start to pop up. So I'm going to grab a different brush and we're going to mix a smidge of crimson with a bunch of yellow. So here's the yellow mix. Here's the dot of crimson. You don't even need to do much with it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to probably just put it a little taster right here. Try that out. It looks like it's got some white in it, so I'm going to even muddy that up with white. Closer. So maybe a little bit more crimson than that because it's more towards the red side. So you're going for almost like a peach color. And the easiest way to do that is start with a lot of yellow, a little bit of white, and then just gradually tap in to crimson and just keep mixing until you think it looks about right, close to the value. And in my case, I'm going to just basically do a taster trial right here. And that's about accurate. And then it's got a big, big chunk of white right in the middle. I've never noticed that. I always thought, maybe it's just yellow, like a gigantor chunk of yellow. No. So big reflections of the sun most times are just white chunks right in the middle. And then the surrounding lines, like surrounding it, those are this very, very subtle, small yellow that's very, very bright yellow. And it's more like white and yellow combined. And then you surround that with orange, and it looks a lot brighter than it actually is. It's kind of an illusion. And that's what we're going to pull off right here. fact, you need to have a very clean palette knife for that too. So if you're using a palette knife like I'm going to be using right here and keeping it nice and thick, be sure that it's clean because you don't want it taking, like I had on this. I had a nice amount of purple in there that just flew off the knife. So go be sure to wipe off your palette knife completely. Make sure it's got no stains or anything left on there because whatever's left on the knife is coming off. Good evening, youngster. Hi, Jared. Hey, Linda, it's good to see you. Oh, man. Youngster. That's funny. Okay, so next line of business, what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer it with that kind of peachy color because in this case, you won't be seeing too much of the yellow. It's more of the peachy color. So I'm just going to be gradually going from darker to lighter. And there's going to be some of the shadows right there. So I'm actually going to use this as a reference. Yes, and it's actually not a bad idea to kind of put in some of the reflection there because at some points, here I'm just going to put some yellow in there because at some points it looks like the reflection's kind of cutting into the shadows. So it's quite all right to kind of just paint over that so it looks like it's a gradient almost. So this is the dark brush and this has my peachy color on it. So I just cut into it and then just tap into it. And that kind of automatically mixes it. One of the perks of working with multiple colors. And I'm going to be doing that the same way all the way down. Right through here. And if you find that it's on your dry paint right here, just take your finger and wipe it off. Or take a rag or paper towel. Either way, it works. So I'm just going to take that same yellow peachy color that I have on my brush. I'm going to start mixing it in with my finger just a little bit. We want it to kind of, actually, let's see if we can do it with a brush. It's a little harder to do with a brush because it's not as controlled. There. There we go. That's about right. We don't want too much of it showing through. So it's okay if you kind of like wipe it off and smudge it around. Okay, so right here is where we're going to have our nice white area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that purple, or the, sorry, orange color that I made earlier. I'm going to add a lot more white to it because it's going to go right in the middle. Because we've done our darkest colors right on top, and we're going to go right over those with our lightest colors. And we're going to kind of go into another layer and do it again. Because we want it to be a gradient. And then we'll have a big, big chunk of white right in the middle. And remember, we're going to put that chunk of white with our palette knife, so wipe it off. Hello, Sheila. It's good to see you. And what you can do is you can take your knife and just kind of drag it around, cut through it as well, if you want to make it look like it's got ripples, or you can just flatten it out and smooth it out if you want. Either way, shows a nice reflection. But in this case, it has none. That's what it looks like, just about. I'm going to come back with a little bit of white and yellow and kind of shape it up a little bit, and then I'll call it for the night. I'm going to have to end up getting another camera because this phone's been outputting something that's been hurting my ears. And remember, you don't have to do it in such a kind of like a stiff manner. You can actually just take your knife and just kind of smooth it out, or play with it just a little bit, so it doesn't look so forced. And it's kind of awkward right here because here we go. I just see like that. Just kind of pull it out, just drag it, just like that. And if you want to reflect the skies really well, which in this case, most of it's just showing like a kind of a peachy color. This interesting chunk of white, or interesting technique with the chunk of white and yellow. So it's literally just a layering technique. I'm gonna show you up close what ended up happening. It's kind of, you know what? I'm just gonna take the camera down. It's not a hard technique. It's kind of hard to see just because of how far away it is. Let's see if we can't show you what happened right here. So it's got the white in the middle with like white and a peachy color right here on the outsides, and then just gradually kind of moving towards the yellows and more of the pure colors. But when you're closer to the closer to the center of that highlight and of that reflection of the sun, you use white. And then when you're closer, like right on the outside edges, it's barely noticeable for that peachy color. And that's all you do. And then gradually you just change everything else based off of that. And if you wanted, you can just take the rest of it, just peachy it up, just peach up the rest of the sky because it's reflecting mostly what's around this area. And if you wanted, you can flatten it, but I'm probably not going to. I'm just gonna kind of touch and pull on this area. Come back and reload occasionally. Just gonna do little touches and pulls on the sky, just like that. Then to kind of blend it in, you can just flatten your knife out just a little bit and just push harder, or go back over it if you want. Either way, and then make sure your shoreline's nice and clean. I usually just take my finger on it because it's easier. And the closer you get, just add more white. Make sure it's not pure white, just peachy. There we go. Just cut through it here and there where you want it to have a little bit of like a water reflection line. There. Super easy. Now I think I'm just going to take that same brush here and just start kind of touching up. It's got this color left in it, but I'm going to be touching up and kind of closing up and kind of blending together these outside leaves, especially the darker areas. It's almost muddying it, but at the same time, it's kind of blending and getting a nicer mixture. And it's just a tapping motion, that's it. It's super simple. And the further outwards this way you get, because it's further away from the sunlight, and I will end up having to go back right here and correct that. I'm going to have to add just a pure white right here because the sun is just pure white in this photo. And it's got a bunch of yellows and oranges surrounding it. Now I've just gone into a little bit of that bluer color. And we're going to start mixing it with that nice purple that we had earlier, or brown, I should say. Just mixing it with that brown and then coming back and filling in the rest of the leaves, because we got most of what we want covered right here, blocked in. Matter of fact, we can cover most of this area because a lot of this doesn't show a whole bunch of leaves or a whole bunch of light in between the leaves. So you can just cover it up, and if it leaves a little holes in between, that's okay. You can leave that. Like towards the bottom is where you're not going to see like hardly any light show through because it's just really thick. If you ever find that you're running out of paint, just go grab the same ratios of paint that we were using earlier, mostly towards the crimson side. Go into some yellow. But for this area right here, we're going more towards the blue side. Be sure you really block in this particular area because this one has mostly, actually it doesn't even show anything behind it. It's good. It's good. And I'm gonna go back into the knife so that we can mix some blue with that color right here. We're gonna go into some blue and white on a separate mixture. I've already got it on my knife, so I'm just gonna take that and mix it in with this nicer color right here. Kind of cool it down. I'm gonna test it out right here. It's pretty much the same value, so I'm just gonna keep adding blue and white until I get it. It's just a little bit brighter than this area right here. There. That's about right. So it's still kind of a warm color, but it's cooler than what we had earlier. And it's also brighter. And it's a little bit, yeah, brighter. I guess that's the best way to put it. And then right here where we got that center line, so what we're going to do with that, I'm going to wipe off the knife again. Very thoroughly, so that I can get that real dark paint that I mixed earlier, that purplish color right here on the side, for that center line. We're just going to tap that in to give the indication of the shoreline. And you can kind of pull it down if you need to, but it's hardly necessary. Here we go. So if you ever find that you get it too dark and you want to kind of cool it down, just take that lighter brush and just tone it down. But what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to bring it out in front with some of that darker color, because we're going to push this tree back and give it a little bit more depth. Because this little dinky tree is actually right out in front of this one. or closer to us. So I'm just going to paint right over that. And then for this, I'm just going to kind of ease it back into a little bit closer to the background. And you can just wipe away most of that paint too. There we go. All right, time to block in the rest of those leaves. All right. Oh, this is more towards the crimson side. So what I'm going to do now, that same color that's on my brush, I'm literally just going into crimson, kind of putting it a little bit more on there, thickening it up with more crimson, making sure I've still got a decent amount of yellow because it's a brownish color. It's still cool, but it's a little bit warmer than right at the bottom. So I'm going to take a smidge of white, or that grayish color that we have right here. See where I tapped it? Boop, just that much. Tone it down, test it out. All right, that's about right. And then just go back into that and just rinse and repeat until you get what you want. I'm going to leave a nice little blank spot right here, and then one that's kind of opening up right there. And I'm going to really, really close it in right here because it doesn't show anything breaking through. But we're going to leave a nice little opening right there. Because it does show, but it's kind of like a misty effect. So this is going to be nice and misty. Well, thanks, Jamie. Appreciate that. This is so pretty. It's just one of the commissions that I'm working on. We're just demonstrating how to show silhouettes nicely and how to make it look impressionistic just by you're not putting in a whole bunch of details on this. You're just giving the impression that it's there. And towards, actually here shortly, I'll actually come in closer and show y'all what it actually looks like. I'll be pushing in so y'all can see the details. I'm going to put in a little bit more yellow because closer to the light, it looks brown. And the light source is going to be right here. Not hugely brown, but you can tell it's brown. So yellow with purple, which is red and blue, makes it more towards the brown. And the more yellow you add, the more rich it looks. That's what yellow does. It makes it look like a rich color. You can kind of add that little rich color on the outsides and circle these light spots, kind of entrench it in that nice light, so it gives it the illusion that it's catching a little bit of light. It makes it a little bit richer and warmer. That's what I'm going to do right here, kind of surround them with light. It kind of also entraps and blocks in a little bit more, which means just covers the canvas a little bit more, so you can't see as much through it. But that's a good thing, because you want it to look like that. This is, here, as a matter of fact, I'll just show y'all real quick what the reference photo looks like. It's on my laptop. Gonna take y'all down. Get ready. Here we go. So this is one of my, goodness, I'm so bad with cinematography. whoop, this is what it looks like. And the closer you get, the easier it is to see. I know it's kind of awkward, but bear with me. All right. And I've got maybe 5 minutes left. No. Okay. Ooh, I just had an idea. So the light source that I have has a lot of that brown on it. So I'm going to actually start coming around here with those brown colors. Kind of just encapsulate it like that. We don't want to completely cover it. And the good thing about having so much yellow is it's a transparent color, so you can see what's behind it a lot easier. So you can kind of tap it in, but not completely cover it. And then right here is going to be our white. I'm going to actively avoid this because we do not want to cover that spot up. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of come over the tops of these because it looks like you can't see all of them. So wherever your darkest spot is, you're going to surround those darkest spots to look like you can see almost like an illusion around them, like it's getting farther and farther away, a misty illusion around them. Now this area is a fun one because there are some branches over here. Matter of fact, I kind of need to push it out a little bit and cover it more. So next line of business, we're going to take a knife, we're going to start painting in the branches. The branches are pretty dark. They're about the same color though, and the same value. So I'm not going to do too much with them. I'm just going to kind of tap them in. And it's okay if they don't connect either. As a matter of fact, it looks pretty solid when you don't let them completely connect. When you've got just little indications of branches here and there, they look really nice. So that, just putting little tiny things here and there. As a matter of fact, I might even add some more white to it so we can make it look further away. There we go. There we go. That further away color. By adding this little gray to it, just putting it over the top of it, that actually did it. Because it's the same value. And it just shows a lot, it shows up a lot nicer. Just put them in here and there, just like that. Just kind of connect them. And then it's got a couple of them right through here. Come back through here, darken it up nicely, because it mostly doesn't show over here. Then I'm going to actually come around here and start filling in all this nice area with that brownish color that we had earlier. This is just the final touches, and then I think I'll actually be Yep, it looks like I'll just about be done. I might come back over here over it with the same brown color actually. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of start almost glazing over this stuff because it's a little bit warmer than what we've got already here. It's a pretty cool color here. It's a little bit warmer than that. So the good thing about the brown and the yellow is very nice and transparent, so that's what we're going to use. And the value is just right. It's just like this, except a little bit less. So we're just going to paint right over this and give the illusion of lots of leaves. And we're going to actively avoid this nice, cool color of the trees. And we're going to kind of paint over this and do what we did over here. Paint over the top. Some little leaves that look like they're just very microscopic. There. Like they're disappearing. Yeah? Super easy. It's nice. But you can see the nice little breaks in there as well. So now I'm going to have to actually start adjusting the values because from what I'm looking at, I kind of goofed it up just a little bit. So the left side's a little darker than the right side. The left side's actually correct. The right side, however, actually need to go back over it just a little bit like this. And it doesn't hurt to kind of just tap over it either. It's kind of like the leaves we had earlier. Doesn't hurt. We can always make it darker on the tree itself. So it is okay to paint over it just a little bit to make it darker. You can always come back and correct the tree. It's a little bit more difficult on this side, strictly because I've already painted a lighter color. So now I'm constantly having to, go back over it with that darker color and add, or go back and reload my brush and even remix paint because of something that I just didn't catch with my eye. So we're just going to kind of ensure that this bank is kind of a little bit darker. Leave these light spots, kind of paint over them, just go gently with your brush, kind of pull, and then really push down hard with your brushes right here. Just like that. And there we go. Start touching up these spots. Just get that warm feeling back into the trees. Matter of fact, it kind of shows a shoreline right here. So I'm going to come back with the palette knife and put in some darker colors right over here. Kind of pull that with a knife because it shows the shoreline just a little bit better. Then the last little touch. We're going to take that same peachy color. We're going to kind of post it up just right over this area. And ensure that we don't have, it's kind of mixing in with the darker color, but that's okay. We can come back and paint real thick over that. Ensure that you got that nice peachy consistency kind of all around here. And try not to get that purple in there. I left some purple. You know what I'm even going to do? I'm going to add some yellow to that. It's a little bit much, but there we go. Just going to kind of graze it across, just to give it a little bit of changing. Even though it's kind of flat in the picture, I don't like it. I don't like it flat, so I'm just going to leave a little bit of rich color here and there, just for me. And there you have it. That is a just about finished picture. We're going to go back up. We're going to go back over that tree and then put in this light here, and then she'll be done. So, next line of business, get that darker color right on the tree. There we go. Just like so. Just be sure to make it a little bit darker than this little shadow right here. Super easy to do. Just take that darkest color that you have it. Use that little gray that you mixed up her here. Words. Sound like a freaking redneck Texan. Mix up into the trees. You can even pull down some leaves right here. It'll be all right. Just like kind of touch up these edges. That nice. There we go. Keep that shadow consistent with the tree and the light. There we go. Come over here, touch up that shadow. Last line of business is that little bit of white. You can do one of two things. You can take your knife or you can take your finger. I think I'm just going to take my finger. Just going to put it right smack dab on there. Just going to come straight in. Just like that. There we go. We're done. And just take the rest of the paint off with your knife, put it right back on the canvas or palette. And also, I'm going to cut that off. There. And we're done. So now for the signature. I am going to dip it into some red. And come over here. Just kind of touch and pull my little silly, goofy, cursive signature J-Rod. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to take a detail brush because that's kind of a hassle. Boop. Then we'll just take the little swish. And then we're done. Boom. So what you take away from today, be sure to implement your grays, which is literally made by taking a certain color, in this case browns and purples, adding blue and white, mostly white, because that white turns it into a gray. Just turns it just milks it up, and that's what really does it. Add some yellow to it, makes it even more so. But that's how it's done. That's it. Actually, hold up. I goofed. No, that's quite all right. I doubt they'll notice. We can just take a little bit of that. Scoot over here. Here, that's got some red on it. We'll just make this bigger. There we go. Now it's done. All right. Hope y'all enjoyed. I'm gonna get y'all up real close to this, and then so y'all can see all the different variations and tones and stuff. I really do like that reflection area. Just looks nice. And then the same thing over here. Now you can see the cooler colors that I was talking about with the silhouettes and the shadows of the background reflections. And then you got your tree right out in the front with the shadow. There you go. And there are those little branches I was talking about. I know it's kind of hard to see with the camera lighting that I have. Eventually, I will have a lot better of a camera to work with. Goals. Alrighty. Hope that was good for y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Love y'all, and have a blessed night. Bye.